Hi, my name is Dr. Catherine Hughes from Crime Psych. I'm a criminal psychologist and I run a business that allows me to bring knowledge and learning to everybody. And I do this by producing a range of blogs, vlogs and free online courses. I do also run some slightly more in-depth courses, both online and face-to-face. And you don't need any previous qualifications to learn with me, and there are a range of subjects available. So once you've finished watching this video, why not head on over to my website and see if any of those are of interest to you. This particular video is looking at Mick Philpott. Mick Philpott is one of the most dangerous people that I've ever done a psychological analysis of. And yes, that includes all of the serial killers that I've looked at. Mick Philpott is most widely known for killing 5 of his children and their half-brother by setting fire to the house that they were sleeping in. He'd already been in the media spotlight because of the lifestyle that he chose to lead. Mick Philpott and his wife Mairead, together with their friend Paul Mosley, were found guilty of the manslaughter of the 6 children. Philpott was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 15 years in prison. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I like to begin by taking a look at the offender's upbringing, because there's usually always clues or significant events that are worthy of note. It took a while, though, to find any online resources that mentioned either of their upbringing. Most of the articles that I found focused on how controlling and manipulative Philpott is. I found one article in Closer where Mairead's sister gave an interview. In it, she tells how her and the rest of her family are absolutely devastated by what she's done. Bernadette, Mairead's sister, says that they had a very happy childhood. She said, "Our childhood was happy. Dad was a baker and Mum stayed at home to look after us. We're a close family. Mairead was quite timid but craved attention." I also found one article in a newspaper where Mick Philpott's sister gave an interview. She said, "As kids, we had a perfect upbringing and lifestyle. We had good Christmases and holidays and wanted for nothing. We had great parents and we were all very close. We rarely fell out. Mum worked at Rolls-Royce in Derby till she was 70, doing something with engines, and Dad, bless him, passed away 8 years ago." On the face of things, there doesn't seem to be much out of place in either of their upbringings. However, since a fairly early age, Mick Philpott has shown aggressive and controlling behaviour, especially in relationships. The arson attack wasn't the first time that he'd been convicted of a crime, and it wasn't the first time that we'd seen him on our screens. Mick Philpott served in the army in his early adulthood. At the age of 19, whilst he was in the army, he met Kim Hill, who was only 16 at the time. Philpott was outgoing and cocky, and he had a high level of self-confidence. The relationship progressed very quickly. Unfortunately, though, so did his controlling behaviour. He'd often go missing from the army so he could check up on Kim, and he regularly accused her of having affairs. In her first televised interview on the Crime and Investigation channel, she recalls how he jumped out on her once, asking her where she'd been because she was late coming home. That was the first time that she said that he'd hit her. She said he broke down in tears afterwards, saying that he was sorry and it wouldn't ever happen again. But it did. And he'd become quite violent towards her on occasions. On one occasion, he shot Hill in the groin with a crossbow because he felt her dress was too short. On another occasion, he cracked her kneecap with a hammer because she paid too much attention to a baby that she was minding. Philpott was aggressive, domineering, and the way he behaved during this relationship shows that he insisted on being the centre of attention. He showed very little empathy for Kim Hill, and he only showed remorse to stop her from telling others about his abuse. He was controlling, violent and manipulative. This behaviour also demonstrates, though, that he was fairly insecure. Hill sent him a letter saying that she was going to leave him. He made threats about it not being over. He would say things to her like, "If I can't have you, no one can." Philpott followed her home after a night out, waited for her father to leave for work, then he broke in to go through her belongings while she slept. Hill says that she woke up realising that somebody was in her room, and he put his hand over her mouth saying, "Scream and I'll kill you." Of course, as soon as he moved his hand, she screamed, and he stabbed her 27 times. He punctured every single vital organ in her body. He hated her for leaving him. He probably felt as though she had no right to leave him, and he felt rejected and angry. When there are multiple blows with a weapon, it's a rage attack. It wasn't enough for him to stab her just once or twice. He offloaded all of the aggression that he felt on her. When her mum came into the room to see what was happening, he stabbed her too. He then goes back into the bedroom, puts the knife in her again and pulls it down to slit her open. Neighbours had heard the commotion and dialed 999, and when the ambulance arrived, Philpott was sat on the stairs holding the knife saying, "I wouldn't bother, I've done a good job on her, she's a goner." This is a man who had absolutely no remorse for what he'd done. He is very narcissistic and he values himself and his own needs above everything else. He's violent, manipulative, controlling, and stops at nothing to get what he wants or to take revenge on those who don't do what he wants. He has no remorse whatsoever. Obviously, he was arrested and he was charged with the attempted murder on Kim and with GBH on her mother. He was sentenced to 7 years for the attempted murder and 5 years for the GBH, but that was to run alongside the 7 years. Under UK regulations, a prisoner only needs to serve half of their sentence inside prison as long as they've been well behaved. They then serve the remainder of their time out on licence. Philpott was released from jail after 3 years and 2 months. Surprisingly though, while he was in prison, Philpott wrote to Kim. She says that the letter he sent said he was sorry and she should know that he didn't mean any harm. He even asked her to go and visit him, come and see him soon, is what he wrote. And that when he got out of prison, they can start it all over again and get married. Thankfully, she did hand that letter to the police and she told them that she wanted nothing to do with him and for him to be kept away from her. Philpott is so egotistical and self-centred that he believed that they could continue their life together after he's tried to kill her. After his release, he met and married Pamela Lomax and they went on to have 3 children together. Lomax said that Philpott was controlling and that she prayed that he would move on to someone else. And he did move on after he met a 14-year-old girl called Heather Keogh. He was 37 at the time. Because she was so young, he knew that he could manipulate and groom her into actually believing that he loved her. They moved in together when she turned 16 and gave birth to 2 boys, fairly close to each other. This is a man who doesn't value women at all. As far as he's concerned, they are there to have his babies and show how virile he is. He expects these women to do as they're told. When they don't do what he wants, he's angry and shows no remorse for anything that he does to them. He has no moral compass and he doesn't value anyone's life except for his own. Philpott was abusive and controlling in that relationship too. He actually beat her when she gave birth to a boy because he wanted a girl. As far as he is concerned, he gets what he wants. And if he doesn't get what he wants, other people have to suffer the consequences. Philpott even made one of his older sons be violent towards her. In 2000, Philpott met Mairead Duffy, who was a 19-year-old single mum. Again, he was 46 years old, and this was yet another young woman that he saw the potential to control and exert his power over. But in 2001, he met Lisa Willis, who was a 16-year-old orphan and already a single mum. Willis became his mistress, and she moved in with Mick and Mairead and was even a bridesmaid at their wedding. Mick Philpott never worked. He lived on benefits. He fathered several more children to both Lisa and Mairead. He appeared on the Jeremy Kyle show and other shows, and he was very heavily criticised for his benefits lifestyle and his demands for a bigger council house. This is one egotistical, arrogant, controlling, manipulative man. He wasn't interested as a father, a husband, or as a lover. He was only ever interested in himself. He fathered a total of 17 children, and they were all providing him with an income from benefits. They were also a way of showing how virile he is. He didn't care for his partners. They were simply objects to him so that he could get what he wanted. Don't forget, at this point, we haven't even started to cover the crime that he's best known for, which was the arson. While he was living with the two women and alternating having sex with them in his caravan outside, the women went out to work. Their money and benefits were paid into Philpott's account. They weren't even given keys to the house and had to ask permission to leave. Women to Philpott were slaves and sexual objects to be used just for sex and to prove his virility by having children. Whenever they challenged him or failed to live up to his expectations, he attacked them. Philpott's mistress, Willis, left and moved in with her sister, taking the 4 children that they had together and her son from a previous relationship. On the 11th of May 2012, the Philpott family's home was severely damaged by fire at around 4 a.m. 5 children had been sleeping upstairs, all died at the scene, and their half-brother died in hospital 2 days later. All of the deaths were caused by excessive smoke inhalation. Following the fire, Mick and Mairead held a press conference appealing for information to catch the perpetrator. You should definitely search that on YouTube and take a look at it. He feigns being upset, he feigns wiping a tissue on his eye. It's just a real circus. Philpott had tried to frame Willis for setting the fire. Their plan was to say in the days before the fire that she'd made threats. Then they were going to set fire to their home and then rescue the children and become the hero and win custody of Willis's children. He took his revenge, setting a fire with petrol in the hallway directly behind the front door. But the fire very quickly became too fierce for them to enter the house and get to the children. Within minutes, thick black smoke had engulfed the house, taking the lives of 6 children aged between 5 and 13. In the 999 call, you can hear the agony in Mairead Philpott's voice as she cried down the phone, "My babies, please, my babies." What happened next is just as shocking as everything that you've heard so far. Relatives who spoke about their actions in the days following the tragedy included Mairead Philpott's sister, Jennifer Lobban. She told BBC's Panorama she's a victim of Mick, but at the end of the day, when it comes to your kids, you should put them first. She also said that the couple never even entered the hospital room where one of the children, Dwayne, was dying, laying in our specialist burns unit following the house fire. Lobban said that they would be instead outside discussing where to order Chinese from and complaining that the hospital didn't give them anything to eat. They even had a food fight in the hospital cafeteria. That is not the behaviour of two grieving parents. In the BBC Panorama programme, Marie Smith, who is the mortuary manager, also spoke about how Mick Philpott appeared to pretend to faint when he first saw the bodies, and later that he'd engaged in horseplay with a police officer who was there by putting him in a headlock. Smith told Sky News that Philpott also once referred to the young victims as little shits, and when she offered him water, he asked for gin instead, jokingly. The parents' visits were a circus, as she puts it. There are more details to be had, however, it's all along the same lines. It's clear that Mick Philpott is a dangerous man. He was jailed, as I said, for manslaughter and was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 15 years inside. After the 8-week trial, a psychologist, Glenn Wilson, described Mick Philpott as a psychopath, an exhibitionist with antisocial personality disorder. From all of the evidence that I've looked at, I would suggest that Mick Philpott may have what is known as the dark triad of personality traits. Psychopathy, narcissism and Machiavellianism make up the dark triad. These traits that make up the dark triad are overlapping but distinct constructs. People scoring high on these traits are more likely to commit crimes, cause distress, and create severe problems wherever they go. They tend to be less compassionate, less agreeable, less empathic, less satisfied with their own lives, and less likely to believe that they and others are good. Narcissism is characterised by feelings of grandiose pride, egotistical behaviour and a lack of empathy. Machiavellianism is characterised by manipulation and exploitation of others, an absence of morality. It's unemotional and callousness in their behaviours, and they have a higher level of self-interest. Psychopathy is characterised by continuous antisocial behaviour, which includes impulsiveness, selfishness, callous and unemotional traits, and being remorseless. I believe that Mick Philpott is a very dangerous man who's ruined the lives of many people. These traits have been evident in him for many years, and he fails to acknowledge the harm and distress that he has caused throughout his life. I hope this man is never released from prison. He's dangerous. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this psychological analysis video. Comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel to be notified of upcoming videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.